Hey everyone, this is my 15th video in the Weissenborn series, and I am so thrilled that you guys have been along for the ride. Quick shout out to my clan in Destiny 2, the Scrub Hub, for watching my videos and making sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope you enjoy the 15th video of the Studious series, Weissenborn Etudes. This etude is full of tempo changes, which makes it a great springboard for a student ready to dive into a solo bassoon piece for the first time. Before you start playing through this as a unit, you'll want to make sure you know exactly what tempo you're taking for each section. A good way to figure this out is to look at suggested tempo ranges for each tempo marking. For example, lento can be taken anywhere between 44 and 60 beats per minute. Try playing each section individually with a metronome at different points in that range. 44, 50, 54, 60. See what serves both your personal interpretation of the musical line as well as the composer's intention. Once you find the tempo you'd like to take for each section, play any 2 sections consecutively with a metronome, pausing to change the metronome when the tempo changes. Does the transition between the 2 tempos work? If it doesn't make musical sense to you, try adjusting the tempos for what you want to hear without moving too far outside the suggested tempo ranges. For this video, I chose to take lento at 54, andante around 70, and allegro scherzando around 144. Tranquillo and marcato are written more as style markings than tempo markings, but you can take a bit of liberty here to make it work for the context of the etude. At Tranquillo, I relaxed the tempo a bit to around 134, and Marcato a bit more, down to 120. In these 2 stylistic sections, it's important to maintain the tempo through the entire section for continuity, even if you change the tempo slightly for each one. I made these tempo decisions based on the roadmap of the entire etude. We start slow, increase the tempo slightly twice, then slow down again. The Tranquillo and Marcato sections serve to kind of set up the final andante in a way. At this last andante, make sure to reset your tempo to the same as the original andante section. A good way to check your work is to record yourself and play each andante section right next to each other. If one is slower than the other, then you know what you need to do to adjust your performance. The Stringendo Rallentando of measures 7 through 10 is one of the most challenging parts of this etude. There are a few things that make this section particularly challenging. First, the Stringendo is 2 bars long, while the Rallentando is only 1 measure long. These sections are unbalanced, which means you have to plan exactly where you're going. Second, we not only have a Stringendo Rallentando, but also a corresponding crescendo decrescendo. This second challenge can also be viewed as an advantage. When we get faster, a big habit is to lose the support because we're focusing so much on getting the notes right. The crescendo, however, encourages us to keep that support as we get higher and faster, which in turn helps the notes speak more clearly. Now, I'm going to present a practice strategy for these few bars. Notice that the Stringendo doesn't start until measure 7, but measure 6 looks almost exactly the same. This is another advantage. Every Stringendo and Rallentando needs a solid foundation in tempo before we speed up and slow down. However, we also need to know where we're going. Play measure 7 at the original tempo. In this case, we'll use quarter note equals 54. Now, play the same measure at quarter note equals 60. Play it again at 70. Now, 80. Now, 90. Make sure as you do this exercise that you don't just play it once at each tempo. Make sure it feels comfortable at the tempo before you move on. And remember how this section feels at each tempo that you choose. Now, it's decision time. From all those tempos we just played this measure at, how fast do you want the peak of the Stringendo to be? This decision can be based on your personal technical level of ability, or it can be based on what you feel works for the musical line. It doesn't need to go as fast as humanly possible, but it needs to be obvious to the listener that you're consciously speeding up here, rather than rushing. Choose something that shows off the notes, rather than the speed. As long as it's clean and you can hear all the notes and an obvious change in tempo, you've got it. Now remember, the Rallentando needs to happen in half the time of the Stringendo, and needs to sound just as natural, returning to your original tempo from measure 1. question about this etude is those natural sharp markings in measures 7 through 9. The natural mark is just an indication that the composer has removed the flat that's in the key signature and replaced it with a sharp. It's a kind of old school notation used as a courtesy clarification for the performer, but as we aren't used to seeing this notation anymore with our fancy note writing software that does the work for us, it makes things understandably a little bit more confusing. The note you should be playing for the second note in each measure from measure 7 through 9 is in fact a B sharp. Here are some other musical suggestions for this etude. As I mentioned before, the tempos change a lot in this etude, but don't forget that the articulations do as well. The allegro scherzando is more than just a tempo change. Make sure to observe all the staccatos and accents to create contrast from the previously slow lyrical sections that came before. The last 4 bars of the tranquillo section have a kind of Vivaldi-like flair to them. When you see this kind of movement, with the top notes stationary and the bottom notes moving in a scalar pattern, the composer's intent is to emphasize the moving notes. A good way to do that without hammering the articulation on every note is something I call throwing away the top note, in this case, the Fs. They'll still make an appearance, but round their releases a little as if one has a tiny taper on it, so that they aren't the focus, like this. In the middle of each andante section, as well as at the very end of the etude, we have 3 eighth notes slurred with staccato markings on each note. This marking can indicate a variety of articulation styles depending on the composer, the genre, and the context of the music. In this case, since they're part of a lyrical, sustained melody and are right smack dab in the middle of the phrase, these should be played connected, with gentle legato emphasis of the tongue on each note without separation. Something like this. Espressivo is written at the beginning of both andante sections. Whenever you see this marking, it should be a red flag that you have some artistic freedom. Make sure you're maintaining a steady tempo while using a combination of dynamics, phrasing, and vibrato to get your point across to the listener. Strive for obvious dynamic contrast, conscious placement of vibrato, and a clear climax in phrasing and dynamics to really evoke emotions to your audience.